Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer. And this is Justin Arner.
Yay! Special guest.
Yes, our special guest. We've had him on a couple times. In fact, last time I think was during Dune, right?
I think it was.
Yeah. So, and then you asked Paul that he commit at that moment to come back for Dune Part 2. So we are, we're doing it. So this is it's happening. We're doing it.
Oh my goodness, I can't even, both of you.
I really did enjoy the movie. How about you guys, the Dune heads? Did you enjoy it?
The Dune heads. Well, to our guest, he is our sci-fi guru, by the way, Justin. You are our sci-fi guru. So welcome back. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is great. So just general thoughts on the movie? Oh man. I mean, for one thing, I completely blacked out all promos, everything ahead of time. And then the hype started coming from like coworkers of mine and stuff. And people... Because
you saw it late.
I saw it late. I just saw it. So today is the 20th. I just saw it this past weekend on the 16th.
Yeah.
And it came out on the 1st. It snuck up on me somehow. Normally, I'm all over things like that, but I just haven't been movies, man. Movies
you
aren't
have
what
children.
They used to be. And yes, that
fill
too.
in the blank.
Right.
That's it.
So the hype started coming, and it didn't stop coming. And people would come up and be like, "Did you see Dune yet?" And I'm like, "No, I'm going to." And they're like, "I'm not going to say anything about it, but you got to go see it in the theater, and you're going to be blown away." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like for real." So saw it. Absolutely blown away. There was no amount of hype that it could be hyped to. It exceeded everything in every way. I loved it. They had to pry me out of the seat with a crowbar. We saw it in IMAX, Marbles Kids IMAX. So the sound,
but it's a real IMAX though. I have to say
yes.
It's not a Limax. It's not the one in the Regal theaters or whatever, where it's just like a skosh bigger and louder. It is full on 6 stories tall, the real IMAX.
Yeah,
so.
There were certain points where my body was telling me that I was in physical danger because like there's like collapsing stone and there's lasers being fired and I'm like, am I really in danger? Am I okay in this space right now? Yeah, loved it.
Well, I did not see it in IMAX, but I had that exact same experience. It's epic. It's monstrous. It's almost too much. It's almost like, the first hour is like, whoa. Okay. Thank goodness he is smart enough, Denis Villeneuve, however we're saying his name now, because I've heard 1,000 different pronunciations
Everybody
of all of
botches
these
it.
words. I give in. My physical therapist was talking about it today, and he was saying Harkonnen, and I was like, what is it? Is it Harkonnen? We're just going to pick one. So Denis Villeneuve is what I'm saying. He allows small moments to happen. The breathing apparatus underneath the sand, underneath tents, just quiet moments in between these massive, huge battles. And those lasers that just cut things in half. It's like, what? And then he keeps going with that. But in the middle of it, he drops it down to this human drama, this relationship movie, and you could say that about all of it, but in particular between Paul and Shani, her worries, her concerns, her issues with him not being who they think he is, all of that stuff humanizes it all. So it's epic. It's over the top. It is what he promised us. It is. A lot of people had a problem with the exposition of the first film and the length of the first film and explaining so many things, but you kind of had to. And then he said, okay, yeah, see that movie? Now watch this. Boom, and just blew everything up. So I loved it. I do have some issues, but they're minor, and we could talk about those later.
Yeah, I'm more interested in that because issues, whether it's issues that people have of the book, like things that were left out of the movie, the second part that were in the book, versus how the things that were in the book were portrayed versus, whole characters that were left out that were in the first film that didn't show up in the second film, and how that stuff was kind of like reconfigured. Because we've added the Florence Pugh character, we've actually see the Emperor this time in Christopher Walken, and so we're adding characters, and we still have all the old characters. Plus, we've got the basis from, like you said, the exposition of the first film. So we don't have to spend as much time on that, but we get all of the cool training sequences, and we actually do get to see him ride a sandworm. And I think that's kind of like what you were talking about, the huge scenes. You get the sandworm scene, which does feel like you are being confronted by a wall of sand, and then you get the kind of kangaroo mouse scenes where you've got the the kangaroo mouse and like the breathing apparatus and all that stuff. So you're right, it's big, it's small. For me, the way that manifested was in the shot selection, and so I did want to talk a little bit about that, but I also wanted to kind of like get from you guys whether you feel like this is a good, if they don't make a part 3, like, are you happy with how this ended, or with the conclusion of, because is this the end of the book, the first book?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Are you happy? Justin? Are you happy with like this being the end of the first book and this potentially being the end of? Because have they announced a third one?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Oh, they have?
Yes.
I thought it wasn't official until they got through a couple more weeks of this box office to see. But I
mean,
guess
it's made
money.
$500 million.
Yeah,
so.
I know.
I think I heard that Dune Messiah was like a sure thing.
Okay.
Okay.
So
okay,
if
good.
that is in fact true, that's going to be, oh my gosh.
When does it go off the deep end? Like, when does it get like too crazy?
Not until like book 4 and 5.
Okay. All right.
So it's Dune Messiah, then Children of Dune,
Okay.
and then either 4 or 5 is called God Emperor of Dune. That's when it goes bonkers.
Oh God. And those are still all Frank Herbert, right?
Yes.
Those 5.
His son took it over at a certain point. I haven't read any of those, but I've read all the Herbert ones. And when they make Messiah, the best way I can describe it is it's like Star Wars the day after. It's like, okay, Luke Skywalker has won, good has triumphed. Now let's see what happens and how power can eventually corrupt, and how he kind of turns into his father. It's not.
So it's like Luke.
Great.
Is it Luke Skywalker just in a bunch of meetings? Is that essentially what it is?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh no.
No, I liked the way that this one ended, and I thought it was the perfect actual. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but it was almost like the first movie was like the first third of the book.
Yeah, we talked about this the last time we were.
And this movie was like the last 2/3.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It really, that last shot, it was of Shani, of Zendaya, and she just was really unsure of herself, and the way that Paul had just acted, she could see him changing. So there's little hints of this darkness.
Yeah.
And so I thought it really left it open for that. And like, I think that is great, because it's not the lazy thing would be is to have, the hero winning, and he's got his woman, and he's triumphant, and it's the Ewok song at the end of, the Return of the Jedi. But that wasn't what this was at all. It was just like, yeah, I love you, but I'm dumping you right now because
in front of everybody.
I need to marry her for political reasons.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to let you go. Just, okay, see you later. And she just leaves. And it's like, oh, this is not a really happy ending.
No. And is it that, okay, so he's playing, we're getting right into the end here. So
Sorry.
Spoilers. It's okay.
We can go backwards.
No. But is it that he's playing the long game and she's not there yet? See, that's the part that's what I love about the end, is that, we're, like you said, we're not sure about where each of them are, because, his change from the beginning of this movie to the end of this movie on the surface is huge. But in the middle of that, we get him drinking the water of life and and essentially like downloading the whole internet of history into his brain and body.
That's when he starts to believe his own spin.
Yep.
He's getting high on his own supply.
Yeah. So then before he's really altruistic, and he's like, I just want these people to get their world back, and I want to, make this all fine for them again. And I'm just, selfless in this whole thing.
He wants revenge for his father's death,
but
though,
that's
too.
where he starts to look at this and say, like, the only way I'm going to get revenge for my father's death is to utilize the capabilities of this army, because this army is, once again, it fights way above its weight class. That whole scene when Gurney is like, you only got 200 people, like you could do way much more with the millions of people that are in the South. So you've got all of that, and so the motivations from the beginning to the end of that character, it's hard for me to determine whether he's completely corrupt already or whether he's playing this long game of, when he says at the end, I will, what is it? Like, I will love you forever. You will always be in my heart. Something like that.
As long as I breathe.
Yeah. As long as I breathe.
Yeah. So that is pretty definitive. And then he turns right around and says, Florence Pugh, I'm going to marry you. So that, that you could look at that and be like, okay, obviously it's calculated. But then at the same time, you could be like, maybe down the road, he's just going to be like, I am emperor and we're going to just like do whatever we want. So I don't know. And he knows, but.
Well, his dad never married his mom. His dad. What are you laughing at?
Wait, what did you say?
I said his dad never married his mom.
Oh, yeah. I thought
She
said
was
he could have
just-
married his mom. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Well, no. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, it's a whole nother story, and it's not a Greek tragedy, although it comes close. No, because she was just his mistress, or actually not
Concubine
mistress.
is what they call
Concubine.
them,
I
yeah.
hate that word, though. Ugh.
Oh,
That word freaks me out a little bit. I don't know why. But yeah, so, and he even says that in the first movie, I should have married you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all bets are off in that family. He
Well,
could marry
and
somebody and have on the side.
Well, speaking of family, now that everybody's got, now that his mother is the what is it called? The something mother, the Reverend Mother. Now that his mother is the Reverend Mother, that she now knows the history of herself, and he knows the history of her. That opened up a lot more for me, at least from the story standpoint. And the Harkonnen, Baron Harkonnen, becomes a little bit different, I guess. Like he's working on a different level also, as far as like how he wanted to use the Emperor to get rid of Atreides, and then set things up for, I guess, ultimately the whatever. See, I'm already
Fade
losing it.
Ratha.
Fade Ratha.
It's not easy, Josh. Give yourself
Okay.
a break. I mean, it's not easy. And this has come from me who can't pronounce anything. So it's impossible. I can barely speak the English language. So these words are ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, so then there's more complexity to that character too. So that actually opened up a lot more for me, as far as like it's not necessarily becoming a soap opera, but it has a much deeper resonance, I think. And that now that I guess they're doing a third one, that'll be a little bit more interesting for me. But the reason why I brought that up is because a lot of people are calling this Empire Strikes Back. And I'm trying to like fight against that, because I don't necessarily see it all the way down. The way that it ends isn't necessarily like, I mean, there's no medal ceremony like in Star Wars, and there's no Ewoks dancing like in Return of the Jedi. So I guess if you're trying to map it onto Star Wars, maybe you could do that where, the battle just begins, and that's kind of like what Zendaya said at the end, like, this is just the beginning in the first part one or whatever.
Yeah,
but
I don't think but see, it's its own thing, and it's its own identity. Trying to map it onto Star Wars, it's a fool's game. I think it's its own thing, man, and it oh my gosh, everything it does, it has its own identity, from the look of it, the darkness of it, the Shakespearean tones of it. I mean, it's its own thing, and it's amazing that we're talking about it. I mean, it was written way before Star Wars.
That's what it begs the question. Did George Lucas read this and be like, okay, so now we've got the Reverend Mother whose dad was Harkonnen, who, you know, like, and she didn't know, but now she knows, like that whole stuff, you know, because when he wrote Empire Strikes Back, that's when that all kind of like got lined up, like finalized, I guess. Sometime between 77 and 80 is when that information got finalized for Star Wars. I don't know. It's just an interesting thought experiment to be like how much of that was in the minds of Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote he wrote, and then Lee Brackett, I guess, wrote a little bit of Empire Strikes Back too, and George Lucas, how much of all that was in there. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, the themes they go back to the Greek times. So we could say everybody stole everything from the Greeks. So, I mean, we've been saying that forever in the theater. Nothing's new. We've talked about this a million times, Josh, that all of the ideas, boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy finds girl again, all come from the Greeks, all the way, you know, the hooker with the heart of gold, all of those themes, all of those ideas, sons not understanding their fathers, father-son conflicts, sons being in love with their mothers, Oedipus, all of that stuff comes from that. Not to imply any of that is happening in these films, but I thought that people were referring to Return of the Jedi as a compliment to the fact that this one is as great or better than the first one. That's why I kept saying, or Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
I said Return. But now that you say it like the way that you said it, I was like, that is interesting. He doesn't know that that's his lineage. If anything, I think they stole that for Rise of Skywalker, because they just plugged that in, that she's related to
the Emperor.
Is that the movie that shall remain unspoken?
Oh my
The movie that he wasn't on when we did the podcast.
We even brought it up, to be honest with you.
Wasn't I on that with you?
Yes, you were.
Okay.
Yes, he was.
Maybe I'm blocking it.
I would like to block that.
No, stop. You both of you behave. That's not a bad movie. It's just not. Okay, we're not going to go there. Anyway, so
what are you trying to like work for George Lucas or something? I mean, it's
Lucas shill.
Listen, everything in its due time. We were talking about The Last Jedi, and when we first talked about the first film into the second film, Justin, and we can go back because it's recorded, said that he wasn't a huge fan of The Last Jedi, and then after seeing Rise of Skywalker, he started to understand the themes and starting to understand what they were trying to go for in The Last Jedi. And I think over time, that film has accumulated much better praise than it did when it first came out. Anyway, I'm not going to fight both of you. You're both looking at me like we are way further into this world than you are. Engineers with awards, I'm just saying.
Well, no, we've already brought up The Last Jedi, even in the last Dune episode that we did. So, I mean, I do like The Last Jedi.
To. I mean, it's as far as like world building, it's only Star Wars. This is my opinion. As far as world building, I think it's Dune, Star Wars, like Lord of the Rings, and like maybe like Warhammer 40,000, if anybody has heard of that. As far as like lore goes, it's so vast and so deep, and Dune stands up there with them. It really does. With all,
and then you have all the fan stories and all of the conventions based on it. My only point to bringing up the Star Wars films that we've discussed is that time has a way of formulating an idea that maybe recency biased will not allow us to see until time goes by. Mm-hmm. Often people have, for example, the Oscars were just a couple weeks ago, and now time will go by and people will understand, Emma Stone probably should have won because her performance is outstanding. And a lot of people are still a little taken back by Lily Gladstone not winning. But time kind of heals that. And people, they see the movie, they understand the movie, they understand over time why some films don't do well, age well, and some films we understand what they were going for. We just couldn't understand it at the time. Anyway, we digress.
I think that's one big thing about this movie that I feel like these two movies, and probably the third part, I feel like they will age very well, much like the original trilogy has aged well, because like you said, they've got a good core to them, a good structure to them. They've got, great actors. They've got great performances, amazing, top to bottom, whether it's the score, production design, cinematography, sound design, you just run down it all. And it's, even though they made these like 2 years apart, it seems like Denis Villeneuve got the band back together. And so they were able to get everybody back in and have that continuity between part one and part two. So I think that and that's the other thing, is that it didn't feel, actually the second one felt a lot more tactile than the first film. And I don't know if it's that they've gotten better at, rendering the sandworms, or the fact that we are on a sandworm, like we are, there's a camera on a sandworm in this movie.
And we got to see more of the Fremen technology.
Yes.
Because we got to spend more time with them. And so everything's like analog, and everything is so cool. And even the little sounds that they make when they click,
or when they're sucking out the water from the Harkonnens.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the little like bladders that they fill up.
Yeah.
And all of that. It's you're right. It's attention to detail. It's also scale. When I saw that underwater, or that underground pool of all of the souls, the water from all the souls, like it was just, I'm sure it's not real, I guess, but it was hard for me to deter. Like I had to think about that and be like, did they find a place that was this big that wasn't, and I don't know really. And that's a testament to the effects, if in fact it was, CG, or the production design, if it was real. So, all that. And then like, the specifics about how, they steer the sandworms and opening up the kind of like layers or levels so that their little noses get sand in them. So like, oh, I want to go this way.
Sand in their little noses.
Yeah. No, that's the stuff that like you can nitpick on a movie, especially a sci-fi movie, where you're like, why is that like that? And then you're like, okay, that does actually make sense as to how something so small would be able to control something so large. You just got to know where to press.
And in the book, they would have a page of dialogue, and not even dialogue, just expository paragraphs about why the sandworm could be harnessed like that. In the movie, it just showed you. Yeah. There was no dialogue. Yeah. There wasn't like narration, and it wasn't like Stilgar like, okay, Paul, now you know that the way you steer a sandworm is by exposing its little noses. No, like it just showed us. And it was so, I was holding my breath. I didn't realize I had been holding my breath for the entire scene when he's battling. And then, oh my gosh, I got such goosebumps just talking about it. When that shot of him coming up off his knee slowly, and the score just rises, but the score
and that vocalist who's going for it.
The score has tones always. It's not like complete victory. It's not like the Star Wars completely over the top victorious. It's got this darkness to it, because every quote unquote victory by Paul is a step closer to this horrible jihad holy war that's coming. So that's what's beautiful about the score. It's like there's a little tinge of badness even in the most over the top victorious moments.
Wow.
What I find interesting real quick about the way that they show how to steer the worm is that he shoots the first, whatever you call it, claw, and you see him open it up, and your mind goes, oh, okay. And of course, because of reading the book, I remember, oh yeah, okay, I remember that. And then something about the second claw going in, and then you see those little noses. I'm not sure they're called noses, but it works for me.
They got little nose hair in them.
Yeah, they have the whatsamajiggies, the same
the
things.
teeth.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But noses I'm good with that. And then you see and they almost have little personalities. Like they react differently to certain stimuli, and that's how you see the worm starting to move. And I was like, that's really clever, because he could have left it just with the first rip back of the the skin or the texture or the gill or whatever you want to call it. But he didn't. He gave you that second one to go, oh, this is first gear, this is second gear, and this is how you turn right and left. And I was like, oh, that's really good. I'll tell you when the worms got me. That when you first see the worms come in, that's big. But when the worm comes from underneath and devours all of the dead and pulls them back down, I was like, wow, that's stuff of nightmares and makes perfect sense. And they wouldn't just leave bodies out in the desert to rot. Like that would be not fair to all the animals that live there that would probably eat off of them and probably not fare well because they don't use their water because of all the chemicals in their bodies. So that was an interesting way to like, the ultimate revenge on your enemies is that you're getting devoured by exactly what you're in fear of. That's what scared me the most. Something about, and then if you watch that scene again, the way that the bodies dip and fall in, it's frightening. I mean,
like, it's realistic. Yeah.
It's very
like
realistic.
Quicksandy, realistic.
I wanted to see how, remember the scene where Lady Jessica, they get her on that little palanquin and they're like, okay, we got to take a trip to the south. I wanted to see how they get that palanquin and all the luggage onto the worm.
I thought that too.
All of a sudden, the next scene was just them like hauling it. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. But how the heck did they get all of that crap?
They don't have like a jetway that, you're like hovering over it and you just set her down gently.
Exactly. Now seating, section 5.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like
military personnel first.
Children and women and children's first. Well, I actually think that's okay. That is a question because I did think that. But because everything else is so well explained, I just accepted it for what it was because I knew it was happening, obviously. And then there was a thought like people are going to want to know how she got up there. But in the end, it doesn't matter. Her reaction about where they're going is what matters. Yes. So I was okay with it. And maybe somewhere down the line, somebody will get into what's
3.
The other writer's name? What's the other writer's name? It's Denis Villeneuve.
Paul Spates.
Is it Paul? Or John? John Spates?
John Spates, that's
okay.
it. Yeah.
Somebody's going to get in their ear and be like, how did she get up there? And they're going to explain it in the third movie.
But
somehow.
when you're in the hands of an absolute master like Villeneuve, you get what you need to know. All the other things, you almost could imagine, and you don't mind imagining how they're done.
Yeah.
Because he's given you enough to work with. And it's fun to talk about, like with your friends, like, how do you think they got on the work, And it's not like it's a flaw in the movie at all.
Yeah.
The one thing that I did talk about with my group of friends afterwards was it didn't have that one scene. So this was so cool. He put the thumper in on the dune, and then the worm started coming, and he was moving to the right because of the angle that the worm was coming. Then it went underground, and it came back up at a different angle. So he moved back to the left, because he had to jump on it in the right way. But the next scene, he's on top of the worm, and he's got his goggles on.
When did he put his goggles on?
His goggles on? That's what we were all talking about. It just needed that one scene, and maybe we all missed it.
Well, you got to see his eyes. That's the problem, that's that,
right.
You have to see his eyes in a lot of these scenes.
You can't ride that thing without goggles.
No, there's no way. Just the walls of sand coming at the camera.
Yes.
Like, that was the other smart thing that Villeneuve did, was from the point of view of the writer, is as opposed to
there was no wide
being
shot.
Next to it. Nope, not until the very end.
Yeah, very end.
Up. With him on top of that thing the whole time. That's why I was like breathless.
Yeah.
Oh man,
it's smart. Now the part, the sandworm part that kind of like overtook me was closer to the end when they start their attacks, and they're even Paul plans it all out, and you kind of know that the sandworms are going to be coming from one particular direction, but the way that it's shot is you've got the little like globe, the little marble silver globe that the emperor and everybody is in right in the center, and we're the camera's on the other side of that, and then way behind them in the far background, way out of focus, is just this huge this sandworm busting through this wall, and then there's a couple other ones that come off to the side of them, and it's the sense of scale is so epic, and it's because it's a desert, because there's really not much around. You can do that you can show those kinds of images, and you really get the feeling of like, this thing is absolutely huge. Like, I wouldn't even be able to grab around one of their teeth. Like they're that big.
Yes.
So that's the part that I was just kind of like, you can't mess with these guys. So
well, you get that epic scale when the worm eats the bodies too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like this big.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my head's the worm. Yeah. So it's, and also real quick about the whole Lady Jessica thing, and her travels. If they had spent time explaining that, it would have the whole epic way that you learn how to steer the worm, that would have deflated that.
You're
That
right.
it would have been too much explanation. You know, sometimes you just have to use your imagination and talk about it amongst your friends. And I did not notice the goggle thing until you guys just pointed it out, because I guess I just didn't think about it. But
I really noticed it the second time because I've seen it twice now. So there's a couple of things that I picked up on the second time, but it's so much easier to watch a movie for the second time because you can, at least for me, I can really focus in on the technical stuff, the stuff that I really enjoy, but I'm not trying to keep up with the story.
Right.
And so that helps. Actually, there's the one thing, since I'm on this, there's one thing that I saw at the end, the fact that when he goes to kill his grandfather, and he goes up to him and says, you know, you die like an animal, which I didn't actually put together was the whole that wasn't that used as a phrase in the past
in the
with
box.
In the box. Yes, the Gom Jabbar. Okay. So so he says you die like an animal. But the other thing that I noticed was that the last shot after he kind of like, you know, impales him is that it's a close up kind of looking up on the body of his hand of the Baron's hand where his shield ring was, and I noticed that he never turned on his shield. So that was interesting to me, the fact that he had a shield and he never turned it on, which means he was ready to die. And ready to die in that way, and ready to die by the person who was going to kill him. That was what I got from that.
Well,
So-
that's a well-used theme in a lot of these epic stories, that you prepare yourself. You know that when you meet the antagonist to your protagonist story, that is the person who's going to take you out of the story.
But
You just know it.
I'm sorry, Paul.
No, go ahead.
You can't use shields on Arrakis
Oh, that's
because
right.
it attracts the worms.
Okay, but they were in, weren't
The
they?
Emperor's
Oh no, they
ship.
were in Caladan when in the first one when he
Yes.
killed Leto.
Yes.
Okay,
No.
when he killed Atreides' dad,
No,
Paul's
no,
dad?
no,
No.
You're right. He did. There was shields.
they
in
used
that.
shields in,
Yeah, but
in
maybe
that.
that was within the city walls.
Maybe it's when you're on
I'm
the.
seeing it again this weekend. I need
Okay,
to notice that.
yeah. Like, tell me what you
But
think,
there is
because
there is a weirdness with
you're right though.
shields.
That's why they use swords, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
blades.
That's why they use blade. Okay, and maybe a Chris knife doesn't. Maybe it's because it's metal. The shield doesn't.
Well, the
because
knife
it's not
you can
metal.
go past the shield if you do
You just got to go
enough.
slowly. Yeah. So either
But
way,
that's a good point. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I don't
look
know.
for
Take a look at that when you watch it again next time, and let me know because
Wait a
that was
second.
something that I was like, that is purposeful. That shot looking
Yeah.
up with his
Every
hand
shot
there.
is purposeful. It's
Yeah.
like-
Well. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So wait a second. I thought Duke Leto was killed on the Baron's planet on Giddy Prime.
in the first one.
Yeah. No.
No, it was on Arrakis.
It was so.
Yeah, because the bull was in that room. The bull head was in the room
Yeah.
that they moved.
And so
from
when the
Caladan.
Baron floats up to the ceiling.
That
Yep.
was his own
Oh,
palace.
that's after they take. Okay,
They took it over.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, in the back of my mind, I guess I
No,
thought
Gaiety
because
Prime has the black sun.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
yes!
amazing.
We gotta
That's
talk
amazing.
about that.
That's
so
amazing.
Sick.
That's amazing.
got-
That's
again-
so well thought out.
Was so well thought out, and with just one word of dialogue, he said, "Under our glorious black sun," And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, that's all I need to know as to why. Because when I saw those shots in the promos, I was like, oh, it's like a flashback or something. But it wasn't. It was just a sun that took all the color.
And it's not even black and white though. Like the photography is infrared cameras.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
crazy.
a totally different. I mean, it's a different spectrum of light that they're seeing. They are like what we are seeing is a representation of non-visible light. So that's so cool that they're able to display that in that manner, because it's not even like they shot it in color and then turned the color knob all the way down. It's totally different. So yeah, and in the fact that you've got Austin Butler, who we haven't even talked about yet, as maybe we did talk about him because I couldn't remember his name. Fade Ratha, with no eyebrows and black teeth and all that stuff. So the fact that we get to see him in like his kind of gladiator setup, and I thought that whole thing was a great. Actually, I could have done without the like. It would have been interesting to see him in the gladiator ring first, like to be introduced to the character like that.
But we had to see his absolute psychotic.
That's true. Yeah, you'd have to see him like just
they only
murder
have,
people.
One movie to build him up to where he needed to be for
Okay.
that battle at the end with Paul.
Yeah,
we haven't been
that's
talking
true.
about him at all in the first one.
Yeah.
So we had to see his absolute.
Well,
Because even in the David Lynch Dune, he's in like the first like 10 minutes of the movie.
Sting, baby.
Yeah, so he's
I
there.
will kill
Bikini.
him. That's my favorite. That's his little winged bikini.
Oh, jeez.
I love everything about that. I hate it, but I love it. But also, the princess, the emperor's daughter, narrates the book basically. It's from her point of view. So that wasn't introduced into this movie also. So
But that's the first scene in this movie is her talking. So that was
which
pretty cool.
made it interesting, because I thought to myself, how come he didn't do that in the first film? It's a lot to introduce. I get that.
Florence
and
Pugh was probably busy.
In the '84 movie, I think Princess Irulan is the first person we see.
Virginia Madsen, and she floats.
Am I right? Yeah.
And then floats
and then
out.
and she's narrating it.
And it got ripped apart for that, because they said, you have a mess of a film if you have to open your film up with narration about what you're getting ready to see. But at the time, people didn't know the book, didn't know that she did do that, except for David Lynch chose to put her front and center. She's not reading, or she's not typing, and she's not dictating this information like she is in the book and like she is in the beginning of this film.
So she's addressing the audience in the movie, whereas in the book, she's actually like recording something.
Correct.
For history.
Which is a very thematic thing throughout the whole entire book, because Paul also is watching what do they call them, film books, and that's how he learns a lot of stuff, which is interjected in the first film. There's a couple of people who Dr. Ewan.
Yui.
Yui. He also has a little dictation thing that he goes through, and he a lot to do with his wife and the backstory of why he's doing what he's doing, and so forth and so on, which you can do in a book. And then when you have a 1984 version of a book this big, and you have Virginia Madsen, put her up front, but
her on the
it
screen.
made no sense to anybody, and then you don't see her again until
the very end,
like the last 15 minutes, and it's not. It's not explained well. It's not done well. And then the little child with the blue eyes and the weird floor moves.
But
he's like cataract. Whatever she says.
The blue eyes, I feel bad for David Lynch in a lot of ways, because like they had to use that. They had to actually go to the film frames and color them blue, color their eyes blue. And it's never going to look like what they can do today,
more natural.
with Javier Bardem's eyes or with Zendaya's eyes. I mean, it's just you can't do that. What they're doing today, you couldn't do that back then. I felt bad.
I like it. I don't have a problem with it, because
it's a choice.
Infinitely described. Yeah, it's infinitely described in the book as blue upon blue eyes, and how do you do that? So I was fine with it.
That they did in this one, in the first movie, the spice was always like these little sparkles. It was
kind of goldy orange.
And now with the water of life, the blue Powerade that he drank, they finally introduced blue. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
Where's the
why
blue?
Where's
Yeah.
the blue? Give me the blue, and they did.
So this is like the most concentrated version of the spice.
No,
Is that why it's blue?
it's what the worm like ejects upon death when being drowned in water.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like,
Well, I guess-
is
yeah, I
it
guess it is
integrated into
concentrated.
like as a worm dies, it kind of it disseminates into the sand, and then it all kind of
Yeah,
comes out somehow. I don't know.
somehow.
But that was kind of what I was thinking, and just that's another show don't tell. That whole scene where like you don't know what she's doing, you don't know like why she's like why they're picking up that worm and taking it to the water, which is a lot of water considering they don't have any water. There's a lot of water in that little pool where they drown it. But that's the kind of stuff like we were talking about where you don't need a voiceover, you don't need any of that stuff, you understand this is important, this blue stuff is important, period. Move on. And then we find out why. I'd like to talk about the kind of like how this story went forward with Jessica and Paul, and how they kind of diverted even further at the beginning of the film and then kind of come back together by the end. How they're diverting where he's like, this is, all these people in the South believe in the, I'm getting it all mixed. The Lisan al-Gaib.
Hey, I have a question about that really quick. So Kwisatz Haderach, Mahdi and Lisan al-Gaib.
Lisan al-Gaib, yeah.
Yeah. Are they all the same term for Messiah, just depending on... No?
The Kwisatz Haderach is a man, right? It has to be a
That's
man.
a Bene Gesserit term.
Okay.
For
Okay.
a male.
Okay.
Bene Gesserit. Okay.
But still, kind of like a savior. The Lisan al-Gaib is the voice from the other world, savior. And then the Mahdi is definitely the savior.
the Messiah. The Mahdi
Okay.
is the Messiah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In subtitles, that can be a bit confusing when you're trying to follow the dialogue and trying to pronounce these words, which I've been practicing all day and did not do well. But, that's besides the point. I tried. And I have them written down in big, black, bold print. Anyway, the point is that was just and I've read the book and I've heard the book. So it is a little difficult to follow intricate dialogue when you're reading it and you're trying to pronounce these things, especially when they put all three of those words into one sentence and you're like, wait, who are we talking about? What's happening here? So I just want a little clarification because I couldn't. So the Kwisatz Haderach is the abomination of the male who was born even though he should have been female, and that's why they call him that?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, because I can't really remember it being defined in the book.
Well, it's
I wrote it down. Yeah, male Bene Gesserit. That's what I wrote down.
abomination is when any Bene Gesserit gets taken over by previous incarnations of themselves. So when he tells the Reverend Mother, silence, and she kind of flings back at the end, and she says abomination. She recognized something in his voice. He was using past lives and past voices to do that, and so that's why she said that. And even Fade Ratha was like, there's a quick little look that he gives.
Yeah, he does.
Which he doesn't ever make in the whole movie because he's just like this brooding, like Darth Maul. He's always in the background, like licking his chops. But that was the only time where he was like, whoa.
Respect.
Yeah, respect. Yes.
Well, for me, it's the Muad'Dib and the Mahdi, like that both being.
Well, Muad'Dib is his.
It's his name.
It's his battle name.
Yeah, Usul
Usul
is
was
the
his
other
tribe
name.
Yeah, see, there you go. That's a bit much. Slow down,
It is a bit
Frank.
much, and they do it all in one scene.
They sure do. They sure do. And I don't know if it's because I've seen the 1984 version. I've seen the sci-fi miniseries. There's little bits and pieces that make sense out of all of them that Denis Villeneuve just was like, nope, not important to my story. And not and I'm going to do it exactly how they do it in the book, and that's just it. Because in the miniseries and in the original movie, they are separate when they speak those terms.
Yeah.
They never combine them. They never talk about it. Usul, she refers to him as Usul.
Yeah, it's like an
Sean,
intimate.
yeah. Tell me of your homeland, Usul. Yeah. And which is, I think, a dream sequence in that film. One of his spice-induced dream sequences. Side note, and back to what you were talking about, Josh, is that maybe because I have read the book and seen the miniseries and seen the original film, the mystical part of this film is not as interesting as the other stuff that I've seen to do with this story. Now, granted, he just was like straightforward. I'm telling this as if it's the truth, and yes, there's spice that alters your mind and all the water of life and all the other stuff. But there is a whole thing in the David Lynch version, the sleeper has awakened, and all that stuff that's very, I mean, it's cheesy looking now, but it lent itself to this mystical Messiah complex thing that you're wondering about this kid, whether or not. And I think Denis Villeneuve bases all of his sci-fi in such truth that I'm not sure he wanted to tap in to all of that stuff. And I think he wanted to save it for when he speaks the voice and when he does things like that, that this is just a man in an uncontrolled circumstance where he has to rise above. Yes. Is he going to be the Messiah? Probably. All indications, even a baby in utero is saying it. So it must be more true than not. But I did miss some of the fantastical stuff about...
The book definitely has more religious overtones. Like, in fact,
that theme is dropped.
These two movies completely... Because, okay, you know that Dune is supposed to be in our timeline. Like, it's supposed to be in the year
8,000 years from now.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but in the books, they had little orange Catholic Bibles.
Yeah.
That religion was a big part of how it all interweaved together, and there was biblical like overtones to a lot of it.
And to me, that's where I think that Denis Villeneuve's having a little bit of fun. I didn't know how it was in the book, but I think he's definitely having some fun. I definitely got some Monty Python's Life of Brian in there, where it's like, oh, it's the sandal. He threw his sandal away. Therefore, we all must throw our sandal away. And it's like, it's very,
Javier Bardem was like having a ball.
Oh, yeah. He's like, he knew.
Yeah.
He tripped fast for me. That's, and I'm sorry, Josh, we're getting way off topic of what you were bringing up. But some of the choices of how quickly people transformed into who they were going to be was a bit
abrupt.
Quick for me. Yeah. I think Lady Jessica does the best job because she's always you're always wondering, what is she planning? She's up to something. Yeah. Well, she was told not to have boys and she ended up having a boy anyway. Screw you. We can't see your face anyway. So done with that. But Stilgar is kind of skeptical, although in the first film he does look at him and he says, I recognize you, or I know who you are. But he becomes like...
But he's from the South, so like he's
looking for it.
Yeah, he's got a sub process running at all times, waiting for the Lisan al-Gaib.
That's an engineering term.
Yes, he does. Like it's like a service running in the background that he's... Okay, is that the Lisan al-Gaib? Okay, no. Oh, how about that one? Nope.
He's been looking for it his whole life. His ancestors were,
So he's gonna grab onto it, whereas Zendaya is from the North, and so she's like, it's all a bunch of hooey.
Well, that's smartly done too, because that's not necessarily, he broke that up into two characters. Her little best friend.
Oh,
I shouldn't say her little best friend, like that's nothing wrong with that. But that's the skeptical one. She's like, who is this kid? The
infant? Is that what you're talking about? I mean,
no, I'm talking about her best friend.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I thought you were talking about Jessica. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I didn't know how to describe her. I don't know the character's name, but that's all Shawnee's stuff in the book, but he broke that up into two different characters. So you could still believe, and it's a short period of time, obviously. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes, and it's a lot of real estate to get you to understand that she doubts him and loves him and is attracted to him and all this other stuff. So he gave that to another character, which I thought was really smart, because even when she, the best friend, sees it and goes, oh, maybe, oh yeah, that is it, that's him. Shawnee is going, not 100% still sure. So that's interesting. I will say this about some tonal changes in characters that were a bit abrupt. Paul changes differently than I expected him to change. He becomes very, almost like he has anger issues all of a sudden. And,
wasn't it like the water right after the water of life? I mean, because that was the marker for me. I was like, okay, he's switched over to, I know all this stuff.
Something.
Yeah. There was one scene.
I needed something though,
okay,
because he still sounds a little like questioning when he's talking to his mother, and he says, "How long did you know he was your father?" And she's like, "I just discovered that." Blah blah blah. He still sounds like he's still this, son who's going along with his mother, and he's just, and then all of a sudden at some point he snaps at somebody, and it's like,
snaps at his mom, right?
Yeah, it's tonally weird. Well, there could have been something in between there.
There is a scene, and I'm trying to remember where it is, but I think that it's after he drinks from the water of life, and he does this like thing with his hand where he's like, I've seen all of the different possibilities, and I definitely got Doctor Strange in-game vibes during that, where it's like, I've seen the 14,000 possibilities and there's one, like there's
one way through.
But he does like, there's one way through. And so that's the part where it was like, maybe I'm feeling a little generous to Paul, but he's like, the one way through involves me being exactly like this at this moment. And so maybe that is could be the explanation in the abrupt character change, or the abrupt how he carries himself and how he interacts with the people, when everybody's all together and he just starts yelling at people and then says, "Hey, I know you took out your trash last week," or whatever he says to the guy. And they're like, "Oh my God, he knows things that nobody else knows." That is, I don't know. It just seemed like he was playing a part, and maybe he is for the rest of the movie, just kind of like playing that part of, this is what I have to do. I have to, kill this dude. I have to make make Christopher Walken kiss my ring. I have to marry Florence Pugh. Darn. So,
somebody's got to do it.
It's what? It's a listen on Al-Gaib, I guess. But
you say that really well. You're good at that.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
That sounds dead on right. You know how
Oh no.
Yeah, you're a true believer. You know how I know it sounds really good? It's because I can't say it like that. So real quick question, and we can move on. So when he talks about the jihad, the holy war that he foresees if he becomes their leader, that's before he drinks the water of life. Okay.
Yeah, multiple times.
Yeah, I know, but we
don't see any visions.
It's the spice,
right? That's giving him the dreams, and he sees that weird
stuff. He actually can see multiple futures,
and we stop seeing any visions. We don't see his internal anything after that. Like, we're done seeing because then we would be seeing reality, I guess. So I don't know, which is smart, but. Yeah, we'll see. So I noticed a couple parallels. In the this first movie, part 1 to part 2, definitely the knife fight at the end. I mean, that is a perfect parallel. And then the other one was the Gom Jabbar, how we get to see that twice, and we don't really get to see the conclusion of that. But from what it sounds like, it would have been a bit anticlimactic because he enjoyed it. The Fade Rotha was like, because didn't Leah Seydoux was like, I've never seen anybody like it that much or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's probably
good.
Question: is that in the book? I don't remember that.
I don't
remember that either. But if it's not in the
Fenric, I do remember Lady Fenric, and she was a Bene Gesserit. I do not remember her like mission to Gaiety Prime or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, she's in the beginning of the book, throughout the book, because she's on Gaiety Prime when you first go there in the book, if I remember correctly. But I couldn't remember if Put Your Hand in the Box was in the book. And if it's not, that's genius. Yeah. It's so genius because Barabbas, it's the two guys on the cross next to Christ. Which one is going to follow, or is one of them's going to follow? Because is he a false prophet? Is he not a false prophet? Is Fade Ratha a false prophet, or is he the prophet? It's so brilliant that they recreated that scene briefly that they did. And it was a great way of introducing her into the screenplay quickly and efficiently.
She got like two scenes.
Giving her something to do.
Yeah.
It gives the audience, when she goes, he really is a sociopath, a psychopath. You feel okay as an audience member that, okay, yeah, this guy is as bad as we thought he was. So anyway, that was 1,000 different things into one thing. I was just curious because I was like, I don't remember that from the book, but it's been a while. So,
and also the cameo by Anna Taylor-Joy.
Yes, thank you for saying her name right.
Did not see that coming. I was like, wait a minute, isn't that?
But she's all grown up.
She's all grown up. What the what? Yeah.
I saw a premiere with her, and you got to watch it. It's really interesting video. She's wearing kind of this white shroud type of thing, and her face is sticking out. You have to see this video because it's very interesting, and it's Zendaya, Austin Butler, Timothy Chalamet, and her, and she's introducing herself to Austin Butler. I can't remember who she's introducing herself, and I'm not kidding you. She introduces herself, says hello, and then she goes and looks back at. It's really odd. It's really, really. But I expect nothing but that from her because she is just woohoo, and I love it. And she was perfect for that.
And she does a little bit of voiceover too, I think. But now this particular, from what I read, I did a little bit of reading, and they're actually in the siege much longer, right? In this, they're in the siege for like a couple months, but in the book, they're in the siege for a couple of years. So she's already been born.
Questions, so if I could, because this was one of my big things, there was like a long scenes, and there was a couple like montage type of scenes, and I was like, oh, okay, we've been here now maybe a couple years, like a year or two, and then it cuts back to
she's pregnant,
Rebecca Ferguson, and she's still pregnant, and she's got tattoos on her face, and I'm like, oh, it's only been less than 9 months.
Yep.
Wow. Yep. Okay. Because in the book, obviously, she does have the child, and the child was born, and
the child knows everything.
The child started talking to people as soon as it was born, and it flipped all the women out.
That's too much. I think that's too much for a movie. Like for this movie, it's way too much.
I think so.
That's a movie in and of itself.
Yeah.
Isn't the pregnancy sped up when she drinks the water of life in the book? Maybe. See, I seem to remember because what is the daughter's name?
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, right. She's in that scene at the end. She's in that scene.
She kills the Baron.
Right. Exactly.
She's the one that kills the Baron. She says, hi, grandfather.
Yeah.
And so it's I understand why they
she kills him with the Gom Jabbar. Like with the poison. Oh. I did read that.
I think you're right.
Yes. Yeah. But
I can see why they made that change to have Paul finally the protagonist and the antagonist. They finally meet for one thing.
Yeah.
And then how he has to take care of business. But
they based it on the revenge of the death of his father. So that's why that makes sense. But I did kind of miss it. It
would have just been, I think it would have been a bridge too far to introduce this little talking child. And I know they would have done it perfectly, and it would have looked awesome because of all the special effects.
But wouldn't it be Chucky? Wouldn't it just be Chucky? It would be Chucky.
That's how she comes across in the first film.
Yeah.
Jeez.
He is the Kwisatz Haderach. It'd be like one
it's
weird character too much in a movie with like 18 different characters with crazy names. I don't know. So I get why they cut it.
That's true, but that does bring me to one of my last points about the 2 hour and 45-minute experience that we had. It does seem like the last 20 minutes of that film is grunched in
Condensed.
and put in together. And it
right.
seems less important than it should. At least to me it did. When he says to her, I will love you until I no longer breathe, whatever the line is. It's a great line. There should be time for you to absorb all of that. And then when he repeats it in that council or whatever you want to call it in front of the emperor, as an audience member, you should expect something else is happening. As a person who knows the story, you know what's happening next. The way that they handled, oh yes, I'll marry you, it's a bit thrown in there, and it's a bit just, it should be pissing people off that he decided to do that. They don't really explain clearly enough why he has to make that choice. They don't really explain it. I mean, you put Florence Pugh in the film and then you're like, hey, yeah, sure, what's up? But they needed to explain the diplomatic, the political. They needed to go a little bit further into, not much further, but a little bit further. And there should have been much more suspense built up until he reveals that he's going to sign that contract, because that's basically what it is. And that is something that this movie or these two movies are not as dense. And I don't know how you would do it, but the book is a political thriller. It has as much of a religious themes to it, and a lot of a political understanding of the different cultures and why the emperor is the way that he is and all that other stuff. And with all due respect, I have to ask Justin this. With all due respect to Christopher Walken, do you think he was the right choice to play the emperor? Not that I care about you, Josh. I just based
I
on
had the exact same thought, Paul.
But he was in the video, the Spike Jonze Fatboy Slim Weapon of Choice video. You had to put him in there.
I echo.
If he was doing that in the movie, you had to put him in it.
Okay, all right.
I'll take it. If the movie had been 20 minutes longer, I would have been happy as a clam. I would not have, because all of a sudden at the 2:15 mark, he's riding the worm, and then it's like, bam, we're on to the final battle, and I'm like, wait a minute, is this the final battle already? It was just a step too quick.
Yeah.
And then Christopher Walken, I said this afterwards to everybody that I was with. I was like, I'm glad he didn't go full Christopher Walken.
He tried.
Because there was a couple scenes where it was just like, oh, I'm just watching Christopher Walken here. He's like, the lens red.
Yeah. No, he tried. He tried a couple of times, and the dialogue wouldn't let him go there.
He looked like he was on a soundstage in Los Angeles for every other scene besides the last scene. Like, he was in this beautiful place, and it was like, oh my gosh, we've been in nothing but oranges and grays and blacks. And then all of a sudden, and it was meant to obviously be jarring like that, but like, he's just in this beautiful place, and he's like looking for craft services, like where, and you're right. I think they may have found somebody else, but for what he did it well.
No doubt. It's not necessarily a criticism of him. We've talked about this quite often about stunt casting, and I'm not sure it was stunt casting, but I'm also not sure he was the right man for the job. First of all, they leave out all of the reasons why he's doing all of the stuff that he's doing, and they leave it up to the daughter to protect him out of daughter's love and all that other stuff. It's an insignificant almost part of the book. It's more about her understanding the political intrigue of her father's position, and thus you understand why he's doing what he's doing. I mean, he's an all-powerful guy. He runs, all the houses, and so everything is about keeping him in power and keeping the workers down, imperialism, all that stuff.
He's a crafty man,
but
in the movie, he seemed like he was a little sleepy,
like doddering, kind of. Like, it seemed like everybody else had an angle on him, whether it was the Reverend Mother, or whether it was his daughter, or whether it was Harkonnen.
He's got double crosses, plans within plans within plans.
Yes.
No. He's not doing any plans in this movie.
He didn't do any plans.
Or in the last movie.
He was wearing a robe and slippers and looking for craft services.
Because even Leto Atreides knew in the first movie what was going on.
Yeah, I know.
He's looking for craft services. No, what he's looking for is somebody to press his damn hair down on the one side. Listen.
He's got Krusty the Clown going on over here.
we talk about some deep stuff, and we get emotional, and we have some heartfelt conversations. And thank you again, Justin, for joining us. And not to make this a superficial conversation, but I don't understand why somebody doesn't go, no, Christopher, you have to have your hair pushed back on both sides, not on one side up, one side down, and it switches. Because the Emperor needs to be the guy who has planned all of this. He is the big hands on the chessboard, and he is manipulated. He's the one who sends House Harkonnen back to disrupt House Atreides as soon as they get there. He's the one who sends his secret army. What do they call it?
Sardaukar.
Sardaukar. That's another tongue.
Sauerkraut.
Yes, thank you. The sauerkraut. And by the way, I love how they float down into things. That's really cool. But I kept thinking to myself, we're missing some of the intrigue about this political game that the Emperor has been playing. What does he want? And why does he want it? He has Arrakis. He doesn't need to have somebody come in, take it over, and he has that planet. It's part of his domain. So what does he want?
It's the Bene Gesserit, I think, who are the main, they're the ones pulling the strings, even on the most powerful, sleepy man in the galaxy.
They keep mind-melding with him, and that's why his hair gets discombobulated. No, and that's another point is Charlotte Rampling is all of a sudden there. And that's not really explained either. Why is she there?
Well, it seems like she said when she was talking to Florence Pugh, who was, I guess, one of her,
students,
disciples, acolytes, whatever.
Yeah.
That she's like, this is what we do. We kind of we push and we pull and we control, and how whether it's telling the Fremen about a Lisan al-Gaib, or whether it's telling the Emperor, oh, you really need to get rid of the House Atreides. They're the ones kind of doing the pushing or doing the pulling. So, I mean, that I didn't really have a problem with, but yeah, I mean,
in the book, that happens, but the Emperor's under the impression those are his own ideas.
Yes, he's still crafty. He still thinks he has control.
Okay.
And in a way he does. Yeah. Because he does. Yeah. And so, it did make it laughable, but my nephew, 14, who doesn't know anything about anything, he's very much sci-fi minded, anime and all that stuff. He brought up a couple of really good points. And one of his main things was, why was the Emperor even involved? And I was like,
I had that same question.
Yeah.
I had that
based
same
on
question.
The movie that we saw.
Based on the movie. And I asked that later, and we talked about it. And remember that scene where Florence Pugh said to Christopher Walken, the only way to solve this problem of Muad'Dib is not to kill him, because then that only fanaticizes everybody.
Yeah.
You need to make peace on the planet. And so he took that as like, okay, I need to go there and broker this peace. Because my question was, why did he have to put himself in danger?
Yeah, I thought that too.
On this planet, this brutal planet
that they've never been to,
spits you out. Yeah. What is he doing? Even setting foot on this thing
with his daughter,
and all his entourage.
Yeah,
yeah. And so I think that was where we arrived, though, where he needed to be there in order to make it look like he ended the war and brought peace.
Yes,
but it turned on him.
Oh, big time.
Well, I will say this, and I'll end with Christopher Walken's hair. I will say this: I got all of that through the feeling of the film. So I'm good with it. Mm-hmm. Now, on a second viewing, it probably will click differently. And strangely enough, I was just on a plane and I watched Dune, the first part, and Wonka. And I never even realized it was a Timothée Chalamet extravaganza. I didn't even realize it until later on. I was like, oh, that's funny. People must be thinking I'm really like this deep-rooted fan. But anyway, the things that you learn from, like you were talking about earlier, Josh, not worrying about what the plot is, not worrying about what the narrative is, you're concentrated on just what they're saying at that moment. I'm sure all of this is explained at some point in the film because I felt all of that. Yeah. So it's there. Yeah. It's just my mind might not be able to, and I will admit, and I said this earlier, I cannot sometimes tell the difference between the book, the movie, the 1984, the sci-fi. It all starts to and when I was trying to get to sleep the other night and I was having just a little bit of a hard time sleeping, I started to put pieces of each together and started to combine my own puzzle of Dune out of everything that I've seen. And it was a great sleep. So
that's cool.
It must have worked. So
That's cool. Well, so for me, the end of the movie, since I didn't know what was coming up later, I just assumed okay, he's going to marry Florence Pugh. He just killed Austin Butler and he had Christopher Walken kiss his ring. Everybody's happy and we all go home. But then they say it's basically a throwaway line. It's oh yeah, all of the other worlds, they don't like this. So they're at war with you now.
Yeah, the other houses,
Yeah.
So then, and it's okay, now the war begins. And it's just, so that part to me, I was just okay, I can see where this, how this can continue. But I'm not creative enough to be okay, is it just going to be a war movie now? Is it just going to be a bunch of war scenes? I don't know, but I'm sure there's going to be more palace intrigue, whatever, going on with that too. And then he's going to have a sister, I guess. So that'll be interesting. But so, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in part 3. And I hope he gets the same amount of money or more money to do what he needs to do. And the cool part about it is that now that we've seen two of these, I feel like you give him that money and he's going to make something that is a cohesive whole, and then they can spin up. Weren't they supposed to have a Bene Gesserit show or something on Hulu or something? Yeah. And I don't know if it ever. That might have been a Warner Brothers thing before they got sold and parted out, and Batgirl got thrown in the trash, and Coyote
None of that
versus
feels right.
Acme got killed. I hear that's actually a pretty cool movie, Coyote versus Acme. But we'll never see it. So there you go.
Well, I just feel like that's not right for this world. All of those branches that all of these other things branch off to, I don't think that this. I think this
they try to make it into the next Star Wars.
I hope they don't. That's where I'm kind of going.
I don't think they can.
I have no faith.
Keep it.
I have no faith.
Yeah.
In big executives.
Well, I don't think they should, and they're gonna. They miss the idea of the encapsulated films that we already have, the feelings that we have from that. We don't, there's nothing saying, yes, do I want a part 3? Sure. Because I know some of the things that happen. I have not read those books, but some of the things that happen are crazy, almost disappointing in a way. Some of the things that Paul's character turns into are it starts
you don't
to become,
want that to happen, kind of as a fan of Paul Atreides.
I think, well, you won't get that from this next book, if I'm correct. I think that's 4 or 5. I'm not sure because I don't really know those books that well. My point is that this feels complete. This first film and this second film, yes, do I want a third film to maybe? I'm fine with it being the war picture and it being all those battles that we got in these first 2 films for 3 hours. I'm good with that. But then that's good. Done. Make it a trilogy and be done. There's no need for The Mandalorian. There's no need for what's the
Ahsoka.
New one? Acolyte.
Acolyte.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. All of those. And there is a need for those. I'm not saying. I'm obsessed with The Mandalorian right now. I'm finally into the 3rd season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I know it's not Baby Yoda, whatever he's called.
Grogu.
What's his name? Yeah. He's so
name?
cute. Yeah, he's got a name.
Yes.
He is the absolute cutest thing ever. I would have given up my religious beliefs for that creature also. I believe it. I mean, when he points his finger at him, so cute. I love that little thing, man. In his eyes. Oh my God, I love that little creature. Anyway, this feels different. This feels beige and all contained. Star Wars is red and blue and just, you need all of those extra stories to understand what happened in Rogue One. Rogue One makes sense because how all of these people who died bringing this information to us. Yeah. Right. That makes sense that you do a backstory on that. Makes perfect sense. And that's well executed. This is something different. This is just, it needs to just be what it is.
I'd be fine with that.
I agree with you. But I don't think that'll stop money-hungry executives.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know.
You got anything else? Anybody got anything else? Good.
Just fantastic movie. The build up. I haven't felt that excited about a movie since The Return of the King. Like,
Oh wow,
like
that's so
that,
cool.
And just that feeling of like, oh man, to take something so epic and to stick the landing on it, and then to see it where we saw it, and then to see it who I saw it with. It was just, oh man, I've been on such a high all week since I saw it, and thank you for having me on here so I can gush about it some more.
Hey,
I love that.
Yeah, Dune Part 3. We'll have you back. How about that?
You heard it here first.
That's right.
I thought that was established. I'm sorry. I thought we sci-fi guru. We established it.
Course.
We need to get him a T-shirt.
Right.
All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. And you can find us on YouTube. Just search for The Actor and the Engineer podcast. And we'll see you next time.